So what I wanted to cover today, specifically with this whole coronavirus madness, I wanted to show you some of the tools that I'm using when I'm doing these things. Hello, Raphael. Great to see you. And great to see you, Marcin, as well. The tools that I'm using on a daily basis when I'm doing these things remotely. I've just came back from Scotland a few weeks ago. We were doing actually a remote design thinking training session for people in Stockholm and in India at the same time. And I wanted to cover some of the ways that I've actually accommodated that need and how to actually, even run with two different teams on two different continents at the same time. But first off, let's start with what experience mapping actually is and how to do it and what it's all about. But actually, before we even get to that, I wanted to talk a little bit about what design thinking is as a concept. Well, design thinking has been around really like for maybe 60 or 70 years now, like really named and applied commercially and on some of the projects. Well, I'm not that old yet to remember those times, but reading through some of the different books, I can definitely relate. And it's a methodology. Some people say it's a mindset. Some others say, to me, it's well, some people also say that it's a process of how to accommodate design needs. To me, it's kind of part of all of those three elements. It requires a specific mindset to actually do it, maybe, or can kind of get accustomed with the methodology. The methodology itself is a process, the way that we actually design and solve some of the problems very creatively, and putting the main, I guess, the aspect is that we put the customer that we're trying to design stuff for in the center of that process. And there's plentiful different ways of actually, highlighting what it's all about. But I don't want to get into that. If you want to kind of find out about design thinking, there's a lot of content that we put out there, some previous lives, some previous webinars. Unless you want me to get into it, type it into the chat, and I'll be happy to definitely respond to that. But when it comes, part of the design thinking process as a whole is all about mapping the experiences. And the way that I apply design thinking as a methodology, as a process to solve some issues for big corporate clients, I always use experience mapping from the very beginning of the process to the very end of the process. And I always work with the same experience map. The only differentiation, hello Magda, hello Justina actually, hello Peter, FYO, I'm just looking at you guys, and hello Evelina, and hello Agnieszka, so it's great to see you guys. So let's just dig right in. So when it comes to experience mapping, the way that I usually do it is I create a map of experiences for a certain business, certain service, certain product as it stands at the moment. And what I'm trying to get to is use the same map right the way throughout the process. And sometimes for little sprints, it takes 4 days to do it. For bigger projects, it can take 9 months to actually do it. The entire process of coming up with solutions and prototyping them and testing them out in the real business environment. And for that matter, I always use the same thing. I always use that experience map because I'm trying to have as broad of an understanding as possible to actually get to the bottom of the thing. So hello, Melina, great to see you. Any questions, type them into the chat. I'll be happy to respond. And yeah, just fire away, guys, and let's keep this as open and as flexible as possible. So I'm going to share my screen now. So unfortunately, the guys, hello, Martin, hi, how's it going? If you want to kind of join in from Facebook too, you need to type in the Zoom link or click the Zoom link to actually see what I'm going to be doing now, because I'll be using my fancy tablet right away and actually drawing some stuff on it. So I'm going to share my screen, guys, with you. And let me see, which one is it? It's going to be this one. Desktop. There you go. Okay, let me just move stuff back to this screen so I can see you guys, and I can also see the chat if there are any questions. Cool. Done with that, which is great. Fantastico. Okay, so is this working? Yes, it's working. That's fantastic. So when it comes to experience mapping, I use the same map in 3 different states of that map, basically. And the first one, I'm gonna just go to full screen here. Maybe do a black color. Maybe lower the size of this brush a little bit, and the experience mapping exercise. So I hope that my writing is readable. If not, type it into the chat and I will slow down and make it more readable. But experience mapping as a whole kind of subdivides into 3 different types of maps. And to me, the first one that's actually, to me, missing in the standard design thinking process is a hypothetical experience map. And that's something, so I'm going to type that in, hypothetical. And that's something that I sit down with the business owners, with the CEOs, C-level staff, with the directors, with the managers, with the people operate, kind of making the operations work and making the business run, for example, or you know, as an essence of that business, and trying to get to the bottom of how the actual service, the product, the business itself, how it actually runs and how it wraps around the customer from different perspectives. But I do that specifically with the people, with not with the customers of the business, but with the actual people running the thing. And that's why I call it a hypothetical experience map. So hypothetical experience map. I call it hypothetical because whatever they tell me, I treat as hypothetical because they don't really know. They're not the customers. They're not the recipients. They create those services. So therefore, everything they tell me is a hypothesis that I need to validate. So that's the hypothetical experience map. And that's the first kind of element and the first thing that I'm trying to get to the bottom of. And with the standard design thinking process, this is non-existent. It doesn't exist. This step doesn't exist. So that's something that we've added specifically, commercially applying this whole methodology in the project that we do. And the standard kind of way of approaching this whole thing, it all starts with empathization. So kind of doing the research, talking to the customers, etc. And that's okay, that's great. It still forms the crucial part of the design thinking process. But before we get to that stage, we want to make sure that we know what we're trying to validate and what are we trying to talk about with what kind of customers and why specifically. So that's what the hypothetical experience map that's being created with the business people alone gives us. And that's the first step. And then we use the same map. We go into the field, we talk to some customers, we validate that hypothetical experience map with them. And in that way, through the conversations, the IDI interviews that we do, the questionnaires we send out, we validate each step of that map. And I will obviously show you the details of the map. I just want to kind of break it down step by step. Once we've actually validated what the business people told us with real people, with real customers, then we get to the bottom of the as-is experience map. Experience map. Because now we're talking about facts. Now we're talking about things that are actually happening within that service, product, or within the business itself, because we have spoken to some real customers. We have spoken to some real people, and therefore we can validate whatever the business people told us into something that's actually tangible, something we can measure, something we can kind of put on top of that experience map as an as-is experience, because we've talked to some real people. And when we talk to real customers, real human beings at the end of the day, they always give us their needs and their problems that they're facing when they're using the product of that business or the services of that specific business. So when they give us the problems and the needs, we create the as-is experience map. And on the basis of those needs and problems, we go through the standard design thinking process of defining the real problem and the context of that problem. Why do they have that problem and why is that need unfulfilled? Once we've done that, then we can go to the next step, and we can then come up with multiple different cool ideas how to actually solve those problems or fulfill those needs. Then we prototype them and then we test them. And that's the standard design thinking process. But there's a third map that we add to the whole thing at the very end of this process, and that is the 2B, and I'll maybe use a red color, and that's the 2B experience map. Experience map. And the 2B experience map is there to actually show what's going to happen to that service, product, or to the entire business when we actually implement some of the ideas that we have prototyped and tested with the real human beings again, with the real customers, to see what is going to happen when we actually try to apply whatever we came up with throughout the design process and try to put it back into the field, back into the business, what needs to happen, and how the experience will actually be leveraged from the as-is experience to the 2B experience. And I use, me and the team that we actually work with, we always use the same map from the very beginning to the very end of the project. And sometimes, as I said, it can be 4 days, sometimes it can be 4 months. before we get to the 2B experience map with bigger and broader services and products. And it actually keeps us very structured and actually helps us to deliver on the promise. So that's pretty much how it all works out. And I'm wondering if that's, guys, understandable to you, if there's anything that I should get in more in depth. Guys on Facebook, guys on, hello Radek, hello Dominic, it's great to see you guys. Is that understandable? Guys, you can use audio, you can type into the chat, and I'm just waiting, looking at the chat, listening intently, if anything that I've just described is cool. So that's good. Perfect. Justina, Evelina, Agnieszka, Peter, everything cool? Awesome, that's perfect. Okay, so the 3 types of experience maps, that's pretty easy to understand, right? Pretty easy to follow. Cool. The hypothetical, we create with the business people around the business table. Hypothetical, whatever they give us, is almost, almost empty without the pure validation. So once we validated it with the real customers, we create an as-is experience map. And then once we've solved some of those issues and kind of came up with cool ideas, redesigned them, then we want to create a 2B experience map to see how we can leverage or increase the level of the experience as it stands. And I'm going to show you some of the examples. I'm still sharing the screen, so I can show you some of the examples of what that map actually looks like from the very beginning to the very end, and how to actually prepare, maybe going from the hypothetical to the as-is experience map. And instead of going into Photoshop, which I'm using just to have a canvas, this is what I would actually come back to you with, but I will show you an empty one so you can actually see what it's all about when it comes to a canvas as it stands. So this is an empty canvas that showcases the entire experience map. And I use this canvas from the very beginning to the very end of the project. So I start with this and I put all of the activities that I sit around the business table, and I try to make the guys around it to come up with as many different activities that affect the experience of the stakeholders that we're trying to kind of increase the experience for. A lot of love to you, Radek, as well. And that's what I'm using from the very start to the very end. So, but before we get to the mapping of the experiences, we need to come up with or answer 2 specific questions. And that's, again, something that has been missing for quite some time in the processes. But when you do apply it commercially, it changes the whole thing. And the 2 questions that we need to find out is who we should be targeting, or who should we be talking to in the next stage to validate the experience map, which is the first thing. And the second thing is, why are those people really relevant? And these are the 2 main questions. And if we don't have those questions, we don't really know what kind of experiences we should be mapping, because we don't know who the interaction is with. So we don't know what kind of customer we're actually dealing here with. And again, we don't know if we even have the customer. Then we don't really know why are we talking to this specific customer. And let me break that down. It all boils down to the business goal that we're trying to achieve, or an outcome that we're trying to deliver for the business when we're doing the project, as well as who stands in, I wouldn't say in the way, but who has the biggest impact on that outcome. So I'll show you an example here on 99 Grit Academy, how it actually looks like. There you go. So to get to the key business goal and to kind of derive the primary attributes of the stakeholder, there's specific tools to actually get there. I don't want to cover them here. They're pretty simple. They're covered in the courses, etc. Hello, Patty. Thanks very much, Mike. It's great to hear. So when it comes to the key business goal and the actual stakeholder mapping, as you can see here on the left-hand side, for 99 Grit Academy, in the course itself, we kind of came up with, we want to increase the number of students at 99 Grit Academy by 30%. Andy is the poor old man that's going to be responsible for the delivery of that goal. And we've done that through, we have a track record of achieving similar goals. So these goals are realistic. We've done that with our design thinking masterclass in the past, and we're giving ourselves 6 months to do it. There's a specific tool called Smart Goals to actually map this business goals like that, and I don't want to get into that unless you want me to, and we can definitely cover that as well. But this is the key business goal, and this is the why behind the whole thing. Because on the basis of that key business goal that I'm trying, or that key outcome of this project, I'm going to derive a lot of different stakeholders. So if I'm running a business, like let's say the academy, right? We want to reach out with design thinking, user experience design, a UI, visual design, storytelling, content to a lot of people, to a lot of people out there, to you guys as well. And we want to make sure that we are, I wouldn't say targeting, that's an ugly word, but we want to make sure that it reaches the right people with the right level of quality. So therefore, there's a whole list of stakeholders that we've mapped out against this one goal. So the students of 99 Grid Academy, these can be project managers, systems analysts, these can be graphic designers, these can be UX designers, these can be service designers, etc. And the list is really massive. So if we want to accommodate and create a service for everyone, it's going to be for no one. So therefore, we need to prioritize and actually aim at one group to make this exercise as tangible and as as sensible as possible. So therefore, we have come up with this beautiful tool to actually list out the primary archetype attributes, etc. But really, what it boils down is something that you can see over here. So let's say the customer that we've picked out over here is a potential customer being a UX designer wanting to learn about service design. So let's imagine that that's a hypothetical recipient of the service itself. And once we've answered those two questions, so we believe that in order for us to increase the level of students or the number of students at 99 Grid Academy by 30%, these guys will make us achieve that goal the easiest and the longest, and et cetera, et cetera. So these are the two main and the first question that we need to answer. Once you have that down, then it's all about just mapping the activities. So we are, as 99 Grid Academy, we sat down and we're like, okay, so if current UX designers are potential students and we would like to teach them service design, for example, how do they interact with us currently? And I'm not I'm not that person. I'm trying to get to that person. So therefore, me as a business, I need to hypothetically list out all of the activities that I'm trying to deliver value through to that specific stakeholder, which is a UX designer here, to achieve my business goal, which is increase the 30% of students on 99 Grid Academy, for example. So therefore, I've answered those two questions, and then it's a lot easier for me to actually map out all of the activities of the students or of those in the context of those students and in that business goal that we as 99 Grid Academy do. So therefore, as you can see here, whatever we do here, we list out, and whatever has an impact on the experience of that student or potential student, we list out here. So we're doing like every Monday, 10 a.m. CET, we do a Facebook Live event, so I put that here. Then we do every Thursday, it used to be at 10 a.m., and now it's at 8 p.m. We've changed the formula, so we're meeting right now. So we're doing that, right? We're doing design vlogs, we're doing vision vlogs every Wednesday. We've got the 99grid.com webpage, and there's a 3-part free video series, etc. So there's a lot of different activities that we actually put in front of potential customers, being those UX designers, in order for us to actually see what kind of different levels of experiences we're actually delivering through those elements. And this canvas is basically built of the goal, the stakeholder, and all of the activities that we put in front of that stakeholder. And that's the first part of the exercise. So we just put all of the activities in, then we just map them against the experience. And when we start the mapping of those experiences, I use 4 levels, as you can see here. This like not acceptable, acceptable, good, and great. So I specifically use 4 levels of experience level, kind of experience quality for each one of those activities. And there's a specific reason why I'm using 4 levels, not 5 or 7, like in the Likert scale, for example. Because I want to make sure that there's no way of being in the middle. I want to make sure that I'm forcing the business people around the table to make a choice. Is this activity absolutely bonkers? It's like crazy. It's not working. It should be really like dumped. And the experience we're delivering here is absolutely not acceptable. So these are like 0 level experiences for zero level activities. Then number 1 is like an acceptable activity. It's like, it's nothing special. It's not solid. It's barely acceptable. It's barely working, but it is there and it's operational. It's okay. It's fine. Or not even fine. Then we go to level number 2, which is like good. And that's a solid activity. Our business is built around that level of experience. And we believe that this activity specifically is very good. It's not something really unique, but it's solid. It's something that delivers on the promise. And then number 3 are the activities that deliver on this massive moment of truth, unique, absolutely great experience for the customer that we're mapping the stuff against. So this UX designer here, right? So this is what we do with every activity. So we just highlight, is it a level that's not acceptable to us, hypothetically, obviously. We don't know really as a business. We're just assuming that the Monday webinars are pretty crap, you know, or the Monday live events they're not very cool, they're not delivering on the promise, they're too short maybe, they're too fast-paced maybe, etc. So we have a lot of assumptions. And that's great to have as a map, as a hypothetical experience map at the very beginning. So I can show you an example of how it actually looks like when you fill it out. Well, that's filled out, but when you actually draw some stuff on it. And I think that I've actually downloaded it. That's from Mural, but there should be one. There you go. So this is kind of when I actually downloaded off Mural, and then I just put the dots in the right place, mapping the experiences the way that I, as a business owner, see it. And all I need to do is basically just take each one of those activities and just list them first, and then assess what kind of level of experience am I assuming is at each one of those. And this is pretty much the exercise. And you can use different models of listing out those activities, but I think that, and I would like to get into that in the next one. But first of all, I wanted to ask if everything that I'm covering here is kind of understandable, not too fast, that it's all crystal clear, hopefully, as Martin mentioned. So just let me just see, because I'm sure that there's quite a few of you here, so that's cool. So guys, I'm staring at the chat, I'm staring at Facebook, and I'm staring on YouTube as well, and I'm listening intently to some audio feedback as well, if the stuff that I've just talked about is understandable. So how to create an experience map, a hypothetical experience map. Okay, cool, that's fantastic, Peter, that's great to hear, because you know, for the people that have done some project work with me, that might be watching this later on, this is something that we very often start with. We try to map out as many activities that we're currently doing as a business, aiming at the right people and having the right business goal in the back of our heads. And it can change, obviously, because there's different types of business goals that we're trying to achieve as a business, not just an increasing number of students. You know, we want to do a lot more than that, but on the basis of this goal, we can derive a lot of different stakeholders. And if we map this against, you know, we have the coronavirus now and we're all stuck at home. This would now, if I would be doing this exercise now, it would probably dramatically be dramatically different to what I've mapped out initially from where we are actually now. So I would definitely use this tool to make sure that even with the same goal, I would probably choose a different stakeholder at this moment in time. So that's that. Okie dokie, okie dokie. Okay, well, thanks, buddy. That's great. Concrete and applicable. That's good. That's good. And I like the cold turkey. I like the cold turkey. That's good. We like the cold turkeys here, so I consider myself one as well. But thanks for giving it a shot. That's really, you know, that's really cool. Okie dokie. Yeah, the masterclass at Udemy. Thank you very much for saying that, Peter. That's awesome. We're definitely working on some new stuff as well. But I'm happy that you kind of grasp the concept. It's pretty simple. And if you want the canvas itself, definitely fire away. And I can put a file, a PDF of this canvas into your. Actually, I'll do it now. You know, guys, I'll just do that. Sure, I can get into the primary attributes. No worries at all, Melina. No worries at all. Let me just bear with me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the sharing of the screen, and I will actually dump the PDF of this canvas that we've just looked at to the chat. I hope that the drag and drop is going to work. Hopefully, it should. Okay, I probably need to stick it into there. Okay, cool. So I'm sending you the actual fifth step of the process itself, so the map, so you can actually use it. And I'm gonna go back to sharing off my screen. That's the one. Share. And the way that it works, if you print it off on an A0 sheet of paper, just bear with me. I just want to see the chat. What is this thing? A thing called Zoom. Where is it? Okay, chat. Awesome. So I just want to see the chat so I can respond to everything. And if you print it off on an A0 sheet of paper, these little kind of squares over there, they actually fit a 75 by 75 millimeter square post-it note perfectly. So we wanted to make sure that it's as useful in a workshop as possible. So when you print it off, you can actually dump those post-it notes and they fit perfectly for all of those. But as you can see here, these cards, they don't fit perfectly because these are profiling deck cards that we've designed that you can actually use to do some profiling. And that's going back to what Melina actually said about the primary attributes of the persona. It's not really a persona per se, it's just an archetype that we're creating. So going back to the very beginning. The way that it's, I'm sharing the screen, I am, okay. So let's just go straight into the gist of that thing to explain what we actually mean by this whole thing. So when it comes to hypothetical experience mapping, so we sit down with the business people, and the two questions that we're trying to answer first is, before we get into any research, we want to make sure that we answer three questions. Just do a full screen here. And the first one is, who is the, well, actually, let's start with the why. So why is this project currently happening? Why have you invited us to the table as designers or as a business or as an agency? Why do you want us to be part of this beautiful journey? What are we trying to deliver? What are we trying to achieve as an outcome? So that's where the SMART goals methodology actually helps us out with actually mapping the business goals. And as you can see, or you could have seen, that was the 30% of increase in student numbers at 1990 Academy delivered by me within 6 months. And we know that it's realistic, right? So that's, so that's the why. And then once we have the why, then we can actually sit down and list out, if that's our why, if we want to deliver the 30% of an increase, who is the most relevant person, not really person, a stakeholder group that we should be aiming at to solve some issues for, to actually increase that or achieve that outcome. And that's the who behind the project. And that's kind of catching up on what Melina is getting after. So that's the primary attributes, etc. So the who is built of two things. The first one is stakeholder mapping. So that's where we map out all of the stakeholders, stakeholder mapping. So we map out all of the stakeholders that are relevant to the business goal or to the outcome that we're trying to achieve. And the list, you know, is pretty substantial. It grows pretty heavily and pretty quickly. And I can show you the tool that I've been using, or we've created here actually to make that happen. And that's this one. So that's a tool specifically designed to map out stakeholders. And as you can see here, there are stakeholders that are people, and there are stakeholders that are organizations. So people are obviously people, but they have a different attributes that we're actually trying to list. So these are like the demographical elements. So how old are those people? Are they like seniors, or are they like, you know, millennials, for example, if that matters to the outcome, right? And where are they located, for example, if that matters. What is their kind of drive or motivation, if that matters. So we're trying to list out as many people that are stakeholder groups that matter to the business goal, and organizations. So when it comes to organizations, we want to kind of find out if it's a big organization, small one, mid-sized, and what is their business drive and potential opportunity seek, or an unfulfilled need that they have. And we just map those bad boys and bad girls out. And as you can see, there are two additional elements, like internal and external stakeholders, and that's an additional mapping element. So I want to make sure that I list out all of the people, potential people groups that have an impact on my business goal. And when it comes to internal stakeholder groups, these are the stakeholders that I have any effect on. I have any control over. So that's one of the elements. So if I have any contract with those people, for example, are they like employees of my company, etc. So I just list those people that I have any control over. And external, these are my competitors. These are my customers. These are the people that I have no possible way of controlling, and therefore they're external. And same goes for the organizations as well. So I just list those out, map them against the business goal that I have from my previous exercise. I don't want to get into details of that, unless you want me to. And then I just map out and I take the key stakeholder group that allows me to then have a good understanding of what I actually mean when it comes to a whole list and why I've chosen this specific stakeholder. And again, I can show you the canvas that we filled out on Euro, which kind of it will take me to some of the tools that we're using to cooperate kind of, or collaborate remotely, and that's this one. So this is it filled out, right? So we've listed out the internal, external organizations and people as stakeholder groups, and on that basis, we then started moving them down into the actual axis. And as you can see here, at the very end, we ended up with the potential customer, UX designer, kind of wanting to learn about service design, and they're more relevant to that business goal, which is the increased number of students, etc., than a potential customer being an existing UI designer, for example, that wants to learn about UX research. So in our mapping against this business goal, we found that, yeah, hypothetically, we think that this stakeholder group is better to actually accommodate than the UI designers for some reason, right? So it's a hypothetical discussion with the business people, but we need to hypothesize around something. We need to answer that question, who and why. So we know why, the business goal, and who we should be aiming at. And I wanted to sell you on one more thing, and that's a tip that I would give you when you're mapping anything against anything, really. It's something that I've been using very heavily on every workshop that I do, every time I prioritize any element against something. And it can be stakeholders against the business goal. These can be ideas against the problems we're trying to solve. This can be problems against the impact that these have, or anything like that. And if you have ran a workshop in the past, I'm sure that you can relate. There's usually hundreds and hundreds of different post-it notes on the wall. And now there's a way of, okay, so how do we prioritize them? And people try to, I've seen it, I've done that myself in the past, obviously, as well. But people try to kind of do like axes, and they try to, let's measure like cash versus the happiness of the customer. Just a quick round. So I have 100 post-it notes with different ideas, and I want to measure them against the happiness factor of the customer, potential kind of happiness of the experience, versus the cost of the implementation. And what people are trying to do is come up with these kind of, okay, so this is like 1 million euro, and then this is like 50 euros. And then try to map that against those kind of figures. And it's really difficult to assess an idea that has been generated on the basis of the cost. So I don't do that anymore. What I do is very simple, and it really works. I haven't been in a workshop that it didn't work in. So what I do is I use the first axis, for example, this one. I take any, but let's take the cash axis. I take the first post-it note. I put it in the middle, or even in this middle, right in the middle. And I'm like, okay, this post-it note is going to be creating, it's going to create the axis scale, because every subsequent post-it note that I put on the wall when I'm mapping against this axis is either going to be more costly or less costly. And that's the only thing I'm doing. So I'm just keeping the relevance in the context of this one idea that I just put on the map. So I'm like, okay, this is the first one, and everything else that I put on top is either going to be more impactful than this one or less impactful. So within this situation, I take a next post-it note. So again, I try to figure out, is it more impactful than this one? Is it more impactful than this one when it comes to the cost, or is it less? So where does it fit in? Do I need to move this card to the left to make room for it because I think that it's a little bit more costly than this one? I just do that. But it's a very simple exercise, and it's very impactful to actually prioritize against one axis without thinking about, you know, is it 50 euros or is it 1 million euros? It doesn't matter. What we're trying to get to is a prioritization against one axis, one element, and I've done that for stakeholders against the business goal, as you can see here. So this is the business goal, and I've just taken that business goal and mapped out all of those stakeholders against them. But man, this is a long rant. Going back to how do we go to the primary attributes. So I have the potential customer being a UX designer. And as you can see, that's a pretty broad term, because these UX designers, you know, what do we know about them? It's a very broad term. So therefore, we're using these profiling card decks to actually come up with some tangible elements to pick from. And I wanted to show you how it actually works. And there's a separate canvas for that we've designed specifically for this thing. that allows us to actually use this card deck and put it into work. And the way that it actually works, maybe I'll, instead of, yeah. So the way that it works, there are primary attributes of that archetype. So we take the potential customer being a UX designer, and then we start to break it down into details. We say, okay, so what kind of age bracket do we actually mean? What is the family structure? Where are they located? Are they in the small city, a big city, a huge, massive, you know, megapolis? Are they, what is the level of education? Where do they work? What is their wealth factor? How do they spend their free time? What kind of sports do they actually do? What is their motivation at the core? And what kind of trend, when it comes to the trend curve, where do they actually fit into this whole thing? And you can actually use the cards, put them into those categories, and on that basis, you're pretty able to come up with some cool things very, very quickly. So when it comes to the profiling deck itself, as you can see, there's a youngster here, and he's 18 to 27. We can go to the next one, gathering experience, and that's a person in between 28 and 35. And then we go 35 to 50, production time. Then we go to top form, and that's like 50 to 65. Then we go chasing dreams, and that's 65 to 72, and above 72, a senior. And that's one category, and all we need to do is just pick one card from each one of those to define what is the age bracket of that UX designer. So as you can see here, we've picked out the gathering experience element. So a person in the age in between 28 and 35 years of age, right? And then we go to the next one, which is the family structure. So we want to find out, do they have small kids? Do they have teenagers as kids? Do they have grown children? Do they depend on their parents? Are they in a committed relationship? Etc. All of those elements, obviously, if they matter to our stakeholder group. And on that basis, we can then pick any one of those cards and stick them onto the canvas itself. So this exercise really dramatically speeds up the process of actually, I'll get to that one, Magda. So it actually really speeds up the process of mapping out or profiling a specific customer or a stakeholder group into something more tangible, more kind of detail-oriented. I've even just taken these cards, rewritten them into an email, and sent them away into a recruitment agency, and they were able to respond with a few questions just, and recruit those people for me within a week's time. Or it was like days possibly, because it was just before Christmas time. That was the last time that we've used this, and to actually map out and do the profiling against that. So it really works very, very well. Is that understandable? Just going back to Melina, and I'll get back to you, Magda. How we got to the cards and what the process looks like. Melina, just trying to see. Awesome. Agnieszka, cool. Perfect. So that's how we get to the bottom of the thing. So we know why, who, and a little bit more about the who. So when it comes to, this is applicable to B2C, what about B2B? When it comes to B2B, what do you actually mean, Magda? Do you mean like, can we create, do you mean the entire design thinking, or do you mean these tools? Just give me some more juice. Give me some more meat. Put the meat on the table so I can relate. Okay, so the tool itself and to the business customer. You mean the card deck itself? So the profiling deck? Right. Well, this tool has been specifically designed, you're right, for the B2C more. So I can actually look at the person at the end of the day rather than the business. But it's a cool idea actually to come up with a deck for attributes that relate to the actual structure of a business. So the location, probably, you know, the size of the business, maybe the revenue figures, maybe their business drive, what they care about, et cetera, et cetera. You know, is it a sector-based thing? Like, is it an IT? Let's say maybe a restaurateur, tourist, etc. That's a cool idea. Definitely, you know, it's a cool idea to come up with that, and yeah, just create a card deck for that. Definitely, yeah, totally. So that's a cool insight. That's a cool insight. And maybe we'll get around to creating a card deck for the B2B profiling as well. That'll be pretty interesting to actually come up with. That's cool. cling, you know, that's a cool idea. So maybe we'll find some time. Although recently, guys, I'm not, you know, I don't know how about you, but this whole Corona thing, you know, we're all at home, we're all remotely driven now. Well, hopefully, you know, most of us are. And I thought that it's going to be more time. It's actually less time. I don't know about you, if you can relate, guys, but I'm just going from one conference call to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. You know, usually you can have a breather, you know, like going back to, I don't know, from a meeting to a meeting, you jump into a car, you switch the radio on, you have like 15 minutes or a half an hour of a breather. You get a coffee, you get outside, and now it's just, you know, conference call after conference call. It's crazy. Exactly. It's craziness, pure craziness. So that's that. So when it comes to going back to experience mapping, just to kind of finish off the whole hypothetical thing and all of those elements. So we know how to map out the experiences as a whole. So why does it matter? Who does it matter for? And then we just map out the experiences in accordance with the context of that specific stakeholder and the business goal that we're trying to achieve. And that helps us dramatically to start with. I'm just going to erase this thing first. Increase that a little bit. There we go. And okay, and I just wanted to show you how to then validate that map with some customer research and how to get ready for it again as well. Right, Patty. Thanks very much. Well, it's being recorded pretty much, so we're going to be publishing some of it definitely on the platforms like YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram TV as well. So if you'd be up for that, we can definitely share that with you. Subscribe to YouTube is going to be a little bit easier. Subscribe to, follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, or sign up to 99grid.com for that matter. That would be the best way to actually reach out to us. But we will definitely keep this recording and kind of publish it to some extent, not full blown, but I guess that would be the way to do it. But thanks very much for signing up, Patty. And don't be a stranger. You know, reach out to us, reach out to me, and I'll be happy to, you know, respond and get some of the feedback back any way, shape, or form possible. So that's that. Okay, let's keep this party going. What is the time? The time. Okay, we still have some time. We still have some energy. And when it comes to experience mapping, where is my pen? Why is it not working? There we go. Okay, let me see. Okay, cool. Okay, we are live. Come on, don't let me down now. Very good. So when it comes to experience mapping, as you remember, we have the business goal that we've defined. We have the stakeholder, let's call them the stake, and we have all of the activities mapped out at the very bottom here, right? I'm just going to actually do like maybe little dots at the very bottom. And the way that we actually map these things out, we have the 0, we have the 1, we have the 2, we have the 3. And these are the levels of the experience that we're actually delivering through those activities to those people. And all it takes is for us to actually, you know, take each one of those dots, put a little bit of a thought into each one of those when it comes to mapping of that experience, see which one of those are kind of really unique and which ones of those are kind of pretty crap. And on that basis, just connect the dots. And that's all we need to do at the very beginning of the project. So we just sit down, and that's all we bloody need to do. There we go. I'm not being very gentle with these. And I love to do this hatching or hatched so that we can have a pretty cool visual representation of what is the current hypothetical experience level in our entire business, in our entire product, in our entire way of interacting with those stakeholders. So that's how do we adapt this dynamic to video call? Well, that's a good question. That's a good question. I'm not sure that this moment in time, like being 9 CET, well, 9 p.m. CET is the best time to have a business call with a partner. But yeah, you know, I'm all excited to actually give it a try. So this is the hypothetical experience map. I probably should have used a blue color since I've color coded it blue, but bear with me, guys. So this is, let's imagine we've mapped out these experiences, and these are hypothetical. So we sat down with some business people and they told us all those activities, these are the people that we're trying to attract, and this is the outcome that we're trying to achieve through this whole thing. And that's great. The problem here is that it's all hypothetical. So we need to validate it in some way, shape, or form. And therefore, in order for us to actually do that, we need to do some research around each one of those areas. And the way that we do it, we focus on the lowest ones first. And we use different methodologies when it comes to research. And as you probably know, and if you don't know, I will give you some of the know-how. There are two different main groups of research methods, and that's the qualitative methods of research and the quantitative methods of research. And they're obviously different when it comes to their structure, what they do, etc. When it comes to the qualitative methods of research, well, I'll start with the quantitative. So the quantitative methods of research respond to questions about what is happening with a specific activity. So yeah, what is happening, that there is a problem, right? Or there is a 45% drop basket on our page, or there's a problem with, I don't know, with the conversion rate of something. So they give us the answers to questions, what is happening? And the qualitative methods of research give us answers to questions, why that's happening. And there are different ways of getting to the responses about that. So the quantitative are more about the what, and the qualitative are more about the why is something happening. And obviously quantitative, these are like online questionnaires. These are massively sent out into the wider audience. These are like thousands of people that can fill those out. You know, I would say a minimum of 500. You know, we go into the statistical analysis over here a little bit as well, just to have a good kind of good sample, etc., for our respondent group. And with the qualitative methods of research, you know, we can do like 5 to 7 interviews and get a lot of information out of those, because these last maybe an hour and a half, and we have a lot of time to actually dig deep into the details of why that's happening, my dear customer. So I pretty much, I would put out 2 methods that I would highly recommend for you guys to check out. And for the qualitative methods of research, that's the IDI. So that's the in-depth interviews. And when it comes to quantitative, I would just do online questionnaires. Online questionnaires. Right? So these are the 2, let's say, methods that we would be using to validate our hypothetical customer experience map. And the way to do it is, for some of the diverse projects that we've been involved in, it's not 5 activities. It's not 10 activities. We've been part of projects that would list out 140 different activities of a certain service or of a certain business that we then needed to go out and validate. So obviously these, you can't do it in a 5-day sprint. It takes a lot longer to actually get to the bottom of those. And you can't really cover that with one method. So you need to kind of differentiate. And that's what we try to do, using different methods for different areas of the map to cover the entire map. And the way that I usually do it, I'm going to take a different color, maybe this blue now. I take the lowest elements of the map, so like these ones. So this is like 1. So I take these areas of the map, this one, and these ones. Because these have been assessed, hypothetically, obviously, but these have been assessed as the lowest experiences possible. And on that basis, these are obviously connected to these 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 activities. So I have 10 different activities that I would then like to validate using a different method. And I usually, to the lowest assessed activities, I assign the qualitative methods of research, like in-depth interviews. So I cover those with these interviews, like so. I hope this is understandable, guys. If not, just shout out. So I cover those activities. I ask more in-depth questions. I create the research scenarios. and use that more in-depth method to validate if the level of experience that I'm assuming is pretty low is actually that low. So that's what I'm trying to do, or maybe it's even lower than what has been assumed over here. So that's that. And obviously I cannot, spend the next 2 months doing in-depth interviews around those areas. I need to validate this map as quickly as possible. So therefore I use the other parts of the map and I cover them with a separate, like a quantitative method, like online questionnaire, for example. So I just take those 3 activities, this one, and these 3, and I cover them with a separate method to make it as parallel and as fast as possible, to cover the entire experience map with meaningful, multiple different methods to validate the entirety of it. And I put out online questionnaires for some of it, and I put out I recruit people and I try to get to the bottom of the actual facts and why is something happening at the very bottom of that thing when it comes to the lowest parts of the experience map. And when I come back and I've asked the questions, I've received the data, I've got some insights, I've listed out a lot of problems and needs that are unfulfilled. I obviously do that. If I can move it to the top. Oh yes, very good. I'm actually going to maybe take this and move this a little bit further up. Fantastico. That's what I'm going to do. So obviously I'm trying to keep the links and I don't want to lose those links because I want this process to be as deterministic as possible. So each one of those activities, once I've come back, once I came back from my research stage, has a list of potential or actual problems and needs that are unfulfilled. So I just, using for example here, I've used the online questionnaire, for example. So I got maybe 3 different needs or problems connected to this activity. Then I got 1 problem or 1 need from this one. Then this one gave me something. This one gave me 4. This one gave me like a massive list of problems. This one gave me a lot of different problems and needs. There was like a shitstorm here. It's like pretty bad. This one gave me something. This one gave me nothing. This one, a lot, etc., etc., etc. So I've covered the entire business map, or the entire experience map. I went out to the field and I've gathered quite a list of problems and needs. So if I had to highlight that, that's problems and needs. So these are the things that I've noticed, the things that people told me that this doesn't work. This is pretty shit. This is crap. I hate that. I didn't like that. The experience was pretty low. They didn't call me back. They called me too many times, etc., etc. So these are the elements that I get as data. I try to get to the insights, to the problem and the unfulfilled need within the list of those kind of remarks that specific person gave me back within the research. And on the basis of putting all of those together, I can then go back to the map and I can reassess it with those facts in the back of my head. So I'll use maybe a black color now. I can then take those problems and I can assess them in accordance with the level of the experience that has been there assessed or assumed within our hypothesis. And then I can think about, okay, is it better? Is it worse? And I can have somewhat subjective assessment, but on the basis of the facts that I got from research, obviously, I can then move this little dot to the top or to the bottom. And on the basis of those responses, I can then have an informed decision. There has been 25 different problems. 3 of them have been pretty massive and they have been highlighted at this activity number 1. And therefore, I think that this dot should actually get to the very bottom, to 0. Then this one actually highlights only 1 problem. So it should remain where it actually is. Maybe I'll use a different, like a red one, or maybe a green one. So this one to the bottom, this stays where it is. Then this one, we've assessed that it's absolutely magnificent activity because it's number 3 of a level when it comes to experience, but we found 2 problems and it actually turns out these are pretty massive problems hypothetically. Well, we're using a hypothetical example here, but actually talking to customers, we actually found that, for example. And then we reassess, and actually I think that this would be a little bit lower than that, like that. There are no problems here. It's actually pretty solid, crappy, pretty good, down and down. And this allows us, when we have a deterministic approach to this whole thing, and we do keep the connection of those dots, it's pretty easy for us to then go back to our experience map in order to turn it from a hypothetical experience map to an actual as-is customer experience map. And then we can hatch it again. And we can have a very cool visual representation of where we were hypothetically versus where we actually are as a service provider, where we actually are as a business or as a product provider as it stands. And this is what we can then put in front of ourselves and have a very good informed decision about which activities have the most problems that should be addressed as soon as possible. We cannot fix the entire world to start with. We need to start somewhere. And this map shows us that very well. I've cocked up the visuals here a little bit, I guess, but when you do it properly, not like I did, it actually represents a pretty good picture about what it's all about and how to easily get to the bottom of the real problems at hand here and prioritize them and start with the key ones. So that's how we get to the as-is experience map. Everything understandable? I know that I didn't go into the actual kind of research synthesis and how to kind of get into all of that, because we would need to cover, like, we need to spend like a few hours here. And I'm sure that, you're pretty busy and I don't want to ruin your evenings doing that. So is everything understandable, guys, through the experience map, how to actually, map the as-is versus the hypothetical? Awesomeness. So this is what we do. And then obviously once we have went through the process of solving those problems or coming up with cool ideas about how to solve them, we can then prototype them, test them out with real people again. And then we come back to the map and we say, because we have generated many ideas, we've prototyped them, and we know that they solve the problem, we can then come back to this glorious map at the very end of the project. And let me tell you, sometimes it's like 5 or 6 months into the job that we go back to this map and we're like, okay, so this was the as-is, this green one, and this was the as-is map, and that's great. So we've tackled this activity, this activity, this activity, and maybe this one. And if we did that and we've prototyped and we know that these ideas work because we've tested them, what's going to happen to the level of the experience when we actually implement those ideas? So we have the testing results of the prototypes, so we have a very good understanding of what's going to happen to the experience when we actually implement it. And that's when we can create the to-be customer experience map. So we can leverage those activities that we know that we fixed. And it's again, on the basis of the testing results, we can derive if it's going to be as far as number 3, or is it just going to be like, raising it up to number 2, maybe again to number 3, and maybe again to like number 2 or something. And then we're able to draw the to-be customer experience map, which would look something like, I've missed one of those here, something like this. Okie dokie, okie dokie, okie dokie, okie dokie, okie dokie, and like so. No, not like so. Like so, and like so. So our to-be customer experience map would look like something like this. So we know that we've raised the bar in some of those areas. We know where we've started off when we sat down with the business people. And it's a pretty cool exercise when you actually go back, like, a couple of months in time, and we're like, this is where we started off with. This is what we were like a couple of months ago, through all of the work, all of the design and prototyping and testing and coming up with these cool ideas and then implementing them. We're expecting to leverage the level of the experience to that level. And let me promise you one thing, when you go back after a few months to that boardroom and the senior C-level staff asks you, okay, so how's the project? What kind of numbers are we expecting? It's a lot easier to actually show them a visual representation of where we used to be and what we anticipate to be at when we actually implement those solutions, support that with some of the testing data, showcase them the prototypes, showcase them the testing information that we got to leverage the information and show them that this is what we're trying to achieve here, Mr. CEO. Why don't you give us the 100,000 euros to actually implement this app? Or or this solution to actually make it happen. And when you keep it deterministically, when you keep the links connected from the very beginning of the activities, because it's all linked, the outcome of the business, because many times the CEO is not bothered with how you got to the solutions. He wants to go back, all the way back to, and I'm going to use a red marker here. He wants to go back, or she wants to go back to the business goal. They're like, this is the outcome we told you about. We want the 30% of new students, man. And it's great that you've created this and this and this. You've got this idea, and it's great. How does that fold back to our business goal? Are we going to get to 30% of an increase, Andy? And it's a whole different conversation. There's a lot of different kind of layers to that map that we add. We analyze risk. We analyze the change management. We go back to business goals, all of them, not just this one. We go back to more business goals to actually see how it all ties with the thing. And I can actually show you the, I think that I have it somewhere to showcase. I think, is it going to be here? It's the masterclass slides. Yes, there you go. So this is kind of the to-be experience, or the customer experience map. And as you can see, we're listing out some business goals, not just one, but a few of them, and which one of those activities is going to be impacted the most. What kind of KPIs we're going to be using to actually measure against those business goals that we are achieving them. What kind of risks we need to accommodate, and what needs to change within the company to actually make it happen. Because some of the companies might not have the competencies, the knowledge, the skills, the processes, the tools, or the technology to actually deliver on the promise. So that's pretty much when it comes. That's pretty much it when it comes to the mapping and how to tackle that. I hope that you kind of found this useful, guys. And if there are any questions, definitely fire away. We're prepared. We have like 25 minutes to answer any of those and actually dive deep into any one of those. Unless you want to go to sleep or enjoy a little bit of Netflix, I'm not going to keep you accountable for that. So no worries at all, Melina. I'm glad that you like it, Magda. I'm really glad that you've joined. And the only question that I would have to you guys actually, where did you found out about this? Was it like LinkedIn? Was it like, you know, where? Facebook group. Okay, fantastic. It's like, was it design thinking? Was it that group? Okay, cool. So, you know, we know that it makes sense to actually publish some content over there. That's fantastic. Thanks very much, Melina. Yeah, we do have online courses. You can go to Udemy, Skillshare, or to 99grid.com to actually get access to those. And I can send you the link. I'll actually stick it into the, if you go to Udemy, actually, do you know what? Let me just go, let me just maybe go 99grid.com. You can go to Udemy as well. You can go to 99grid, you can go to Skillshare, but I'll show you the, obviously, the 99grid one. But there are some of the courses there. So let's just do that. And if you go to, I'm going to do Firefox. And if you go to Udemy, you'll be able to get access to that as well. If you type in design thinking, you'll be able to get that. I'm still chasing the Mr. Cooper. I'm like number 4 on the results list, depending on your cookies, but I'm pretty excited to actually, I used to be like on the 12th page, but we have done some heavy work on that. And we're on Skillshare as well, but I don't know if I'll be able to get to that. So I hope that these links work. Yeah, thanks very much for that, Peter. That's really cool. Cool to hear. So awesome to hear. Well, I've been to Argentina. Well, I've spent a few months in Argentina actually on a motorcycle trip. I was doing a year-long trip on a motorcycle in South America and the US, but I've spent 9 months in South America, and Argentina was definitely one of the highlights of the trip. We went from Buenos Aires and then Salta, and then, you know, all over Tierra del Fuego and Perito Moreno, and, you know, a lot. We've seen the entire country of yours. I loved it very much. So pretty cool that you were actually here. So that's great to hear. All right, guys. Well, if there are no questions, I would like to thank you very much for being here with us, and on Facebook and on YouTube, and specifically on Zoom here. And thanks very much for being here. We'll be organizing these every Thursday. So if you want to get to know about those, definitely sign up to 19 and Grit. And if not, just watch us on anywhere like Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube or Instagram, and we'll be kind of pushing stuff out there constantly. And I think this design thinking at night is here to stay. So if you have any questions related to design thinking, service design, UX design, UI, visuals, concept art, whatever, just fire away and I'll be happy to respond with vigor. Have a great evening, guys. Thanks very much for being here. And yeah, see you around Facebook. Thanks very much, guys. And I will see you. I will see you around, guys. Take care. Let me just stop the screen share. Hoke, I'll see you around, guys. Take care.